This is Colin Liddell, and this is the Shortpod, a brief and succinct podcast commenting on the events and issues of the day. And today it is the 21st of September. In about 49 days, America will choose the 49th President of the USA, and the race is extremely finely balanced, with the result depending really upon a handful of swing states where the two candidates seem to be neck and neck, according to opinion polls. My guess is that Trump support is being slightly undercounted, whereas Harris support is being a bit overhyped. And if you factor that in and nothing else happens, then my guess is Trump is likely to win this election. Now, if Trump wins, and maybe even if he doesn't win, we're going to see something of a shake-up in geopolitics, I feel, in the next few years. Right now, the world seems to be increasingly unstable. This is not an edgy take or something you haven't heard before. Right now, we have this war in the Ukraine, which has been going on for about 2.5 years. We have this mess in Gaza, which has been going on almost for a year now, and we have rising tensions over Taiwan in East Asia. So it kind of looks like a system that used to work pretty well is breaking down increasingly. And back in the day, we didn't really have these problems. Russia kind of nibbled at neighboring countries like Georgia. In 2014, they made a slightly bigger move on Ukraine, but compared to what they're doing today, it was still quite minor. China generally behaves itself. It doesn't start too many wars, but they've been building up their capacity, and the possibility of a war over Taiwan is becoming more and more possible. So the previous security system is clearly in trouble. This was based upon American geopolitical hegemony and the relative weakness of challenging nations like Russia and China and Iran. But this has been moving more and more towards a kind of multipolar pattern of global politics. Now, one of the problems we have, or have had, is that large areas of the world are so-called grey areas. The Ukraine in particular was a massive grey area. There was some sort of unspoken agreement that it was sort of kind of in Russia's sphere of influence, but really not quite. And from the other side, there was this idea that Ukraine would possibly one day become part of the EU. So there was a kind of inbuilt clash there. There was a massive grey area, and that was sort of like an accident waiting to happen. We could say there's something similar going on with Taiwan. America, most Western countries, I think all Western countries admit that Taiwan is part of China, but in a way it's sort of kind of not part of China, or it can only be reunited with China peacefully, which probably means it never will be reunited with China peacefully. The Middle East, Israel, Palestine, Gaza, that's another grey area. The Palestinians and the Israelis simply can't get it together. They can't decide on a two-state solution. They both want a one-state solution where winner takes all, but it creates a lot of geopolitical ambiguity. Now, this is not just accidental. A lot of this ambiguity is related to a geopolitical diplomatic doctrine called strategic ambiguity. The point of strategic ambiguity is to leverage more power than you really have. So, for example, you don't really want to commit to ending the world in nuclear war, but you kind of want your opponents to think that you might do this. So therefore, you're not paying the full costs of committing to nuclear war, but you're trying to reap the benefits that you would get if the other party thought you would embark on a nuclear holocaust. So it's inherently disingenuous, it's inherently dishonest, and a lot of big countries do it. The USA does it. Russia clearly does it with their constant invocation of red lines. Even the United Kingdom does it. British nuclear submarine commanders have orders, sealed orders, of what to do in the event of London being nuked. Those orders might state that Britain should then nuke the capital city of the attacking power, or they might not, because, maybe secretly, in the event of London being nuked, maybe the British government would like to kind of dial things down a bit and make peace with whichever country did that. So this is one of the problems of the existing global order, and it's very well expressed by the situation in the Ukraine. This both caused the war and it prevents the war from being ended in a satisfactory way. The US policy, the NATO policy, is one of strategic ambiguity. They effectively want to get the gains of the collapse of Putin's regime, but without paying the necessary costs, which could be quite high as Russia has nuclear weapons. So they're trying to get Putin's downfall kind of on the cheap, so to speak. Now, if Trump is elected president, he's vowed to end the war in the Ukraine, and the way in which he will do this is open to speculation. But I think that any deal he does won't be worth anything if it doesn't remove the strategic ambiguity that has hovered over the Ukraine since its creation in 1990 or 91. If a peace deal went back to the situation that existed before the invasion, that wouldn't be very good. That wouldn't work. At some stage in the future, there would probably be another war. If Putin got a slice of the Donbass in such a peace deal, but Ukraine was required to stay outside NATO, that wouldn't work either. That would be even worse, in fact. So the only plausible way to really clear up the war in the Ukraine, and indeed the potential war in Taiwan, is to end all this strategic ambiguity. Now, in the case of the Ukraine, this would require either Russia giving back all the sovereign territory of the Ukraine and Ukraine then joining NATO, or Putin getting a piece of land in the Ukraine while the rest of the Ukraine then becomes an official part of NATO. Those are the only two possible solutions to avoid another war happening later. In the case of Taiwan, something similar has to happen. Most of the world, in awe of China's economic power, has admitted that Taiwan is part of China. So therefore, the idea that America and other countries would then go to war with China if China decided to invade is kind of ludicrous and actually potentially very, very dangerous. So I think the problem with Taiwan essentially is its economic base, the fact that it produces most of the world's microchips, and this is the real problem in this case. So in the next 10 to 20 years, what should be happening is microchip production should be moved out of Taiwan to more secure bases, places like, say, South Korea, Japan, parts of the United States, or even possibly Europe. And after a period of 20 years, it should then be more or less handed over lock, stock, and barrel to China. Any Taiwanese who don't like that should possibly be given an option to relocate along with the industries. Now, with regard to Israel, Israel is an extremely difficult problem to solve, and it's just going to go on and on unless somebody takes a radical approach. But I don't think anybody will take a radical approach, so it will just simmer on in all likelihood. My own radical solution to the problem is that Israel should be relocated. Now, the state was created by Eastern European Ashkenazi Jews, and my belief is that the true site of the state of Israel should be the Kaliningrad Oblast, which is the northern half of East Prussia, which at the moment is Russian territory. And I think if that was given over to the creation and foundation of a Jewish state, that would create the basis for Israel to be removed from a part of the world where it not only causes a lot of chaos and bloodshed, but it also causes a lot of strategic ambiguity. So in a multipolar world, You can't afford to have too much geopolitical ambiguity. You've got to sharpen up the lines. You've got to nail down the spheres of influence. You've got to make things a bit more clear-cut. Good fences make good neighbours, and in the multipolar future, bad fences will make World War III. Over and out.